So it's the weekend, no work right now, and I'm on Twitter talking to Richard Lackey. If you don't know who Richard Lackey is, look him up on Twitter and follow him. He's a great guy, a great mobile filmmaker, and he's actually in Istanbul right now testing out the Ulanzi depth of field adapter with his iPhone 11 Pro. And I kind of have a problem with that. Hey guys, this is Blake Calhoun and another episode of Almost Professional, the podcast where I talk about mobile filmmaking, DIY filmmaking, really anything to do with filmmaking. And today I want to talk about mobile filmmaking. What is mobile filmmaking? I think today that definition can encompass a lot. It's not just smartphones really anymore. It could be considered drones. It could be considered action cameras, because a lot of these things are controlled by your mobile devices. But when I think about mobile filmmaking, I do think about smartphone video and smartphone filmmaking. And the number one thing that comes to mind for me is convenience meets quality. So in other words, that means ease of use, that means being portable, and that means being mobile. But as a filmmaker, I also like to explore all kinds of different ways to use these devices, to push these devices, I guess is a better way to say that, into areas that people normally wouldn't think you would use a mobile phone or a smartphone. If you follow me on Twitter or YouTube, you know that that's what I do, especially on the movie making side. I've made several films, short films, shot on smartphones, and I just did one recently called The Movie Star. That was produced for the Filmic Pro contest, and I'm waiting to hear as we speak right now whether we made it into the final round to be judged by Steven Soderbergh. If you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to my previous episode. I shot that movie on my XS Max and used limited accessories. I used a Movi Cinema Robot. We did light it like a traditional film, and I used a tripod, and that's actually one of the things I always say is treat your camera like a real camera, in quotes, a real camera in quotes. If you do that, oftentimes you'll get good results instead of just treating it like a mobile phone that you're going to shoot a birthday party with. Hopefully that makes sense. In other words, take your time, be deliberate, treat it like you would an Alexa, treat it like you would a RED camera, a DSLR, a mirrorless camera. And really, I think you'll be surprised at the results you can get. So the larger point, though, is I like to push phones. I like to try new things and use traditional technology in my mobile filmmaking, especially when I'm making a movie. But even then, I still love being able to just grab the phone and quickly move to the other side to do a reverse angle or pop it on a gimbal. That's one of the number one things I love about mobile devices is how easy they are to fly on a gimbal. I've talked about this before, but I did a music video and I shot it on our RED weapon. But I also intercut iPhone 8 Plus all on the gimbal, because putting a RED camera with the big lenses and follow focus and the whole 9 yards on a gimbal, while it can be done, and I've done it, it's not fun. It's not fun to do that at all. It's a lot of work. And most of these indie projects I do have very small crews. Like The Movie Star I just did, 2-person crew. Miranda, my film I did last year for the Filmic Pro contest, 2-person crew. Now, I don't suggest doing a 2-person crew for everything. For a lot of my bigger jobs, I'll have bigger crews. For the movies I've done, the feature films, I'll have 30, 40 people on those kind of crews. It just depends on the job. But for most of my smartphone stuff, I actually like smaller crews. Even for features, I think 3 or 4 people, maybe 10 tops when you're talking about your craft service people, a PA, your art direction. You got to probably have a locations manager, a line producer. But you can really put it together with a small amount of people and still do a good job. So all this is to say, going back to Richard Lackey, using this depth of field adapter, I really am not sure how that would fit into my mobile filmmaking workflow. Does the footage look cool? Hell yeah, it looks really cool. Let me back up about 10 years here. I was really into depth of field adapters with my HDV cameras. I had a Canon XH-A1, and we also used a Panasonic HVX one of the early HD cameras, affordable HD cameras, both of those actually. And the way I made those look more cinematic in quotes, especially at the time, was using a lettuce adapter. And we used vintage photography lenses on your video camera. And those were small chip cameras, 1/3-inch chip cameras. So getting shallow depth of field back then was tricky, a lot like it is with a modern smartphone. You can get shallow depth of field, but you got to be close to the subject. You need to use a tele lens, typically speaking. You can get it with the wide lens, but you got to be really close. So if you like shallow depth of field, these devices are great. But again, I'm torn. Does it go against my philosophy, for lack of a better word, of mobile filmmaking? Quality meets convenience and ease of use and portability. And the other thing too, of course, I didn't mention earlier is being inconspicuous. I love that you can take your smartphone into a museum or into a grocery store, into a bookstore, wherever. People won't think twice if you're shooting video or taking pictures, at least most of the time. There are some places, of course, that are pretty picky about that kind of thing. But if you're picking up B-roll shots for a project, it's so much easier to do when you're not drawing attention to yourself. And even with a Sony or a Canon mirrorless camera, those look very professional because they are professional and they'll draw attention to themselves. With a mobile phone, you don't. But connect a depth of field adapter to your phone, all of a sudden it starts looking like a professional cinema camera. So I'm just not sure. I'm really not sure. I guess it depends on how you want to use the camera, how you want to use the footage. If you're using your phone to make a movie, then yeah, maybe it's not a bad idea. But then I always say, I'm playing devil's advocate here to my own theory here. If I'm going to do that, I would just shoot the whole thing on my Blackmagic camera, or maybe my Sony A6400. It's not even a money thing. I already own the cameras, and I've talked about no one buys a smartphone just to shoot video with. If you're going to spend $1,200 on a device, go buy a Blackmagic Pocket 4K. Again, it's more about you already own the phone. You're not spending any extra money. You could if you wanted to, but you don't have to. I've looked at the B-Script version of their DOF adapter, and it's a little more pricey. The Ulanzi is about $140, so it's affordable. The B-Script is, I think it's like $250 or $300 range. That starts to get a little pricey, especially considering I probably wouldn't use it that much. But again, if you're going to use your phone to make a movie, then that's not a big expense. So maybe it's worth it in that case. But I don't know. What do you think? I'm really curious about this. I've been really tempted to buy one. And as a matter of fact, I was looking on Amazon today and I might buy one. I had this weird relationship with Ulanzi. They've contacted me numerous times to review their products, and they're based in China. And I've replied to them. I try to reply to everyone, and they've never replied back. It's really strange. I don't know if my emails got caught in their spam filter. They've reached out numerous times, and so I bring this up only because oftentimes companies will send us review units to check out for free. And I know that's what happened with Richard. They sent him one. So if Ulanzi is listening to this podcast, hit me up again. I would maybe, be interested in checking out your product. Although again, I may just buy one of my own. I do buy a lot of the products I review, not the gimbals and such. Those are usually sent to me. But in the end, it makes no difference on how I review a product. I always give my honest opinion regardless. So it's just nice sometimes on something that you probably wouldn't buy to be able to review it for the audience. One thing that would be cool is I still have a bunch of my old Nikkor glass from my lettuce adapter days. I've got a whole set, I believe, of Nikon F-mount. And so they're from the 1960s. Some of them might have a little bit of mold on the glass. You can have those kind of problems on older glass, but I've kept them in a nice case, and so they're potentially still pretty good. I directed a web series back in 2007 and 2008 called Pink, and we shot using the lettuce adapter. And back then, that was one thing that really made us stand out, just the look of the show. The content was good. I really think that show was pretty successful. Opened up a lot of doors for me as a director. So in that respect, DOF adapters have been good to me. I've really enjoyed working with those. But on mobile filmmaking, I'm still torn. I really am torn. So I guess what I'm saying here is stay tuned. I am going to consider maybe buying one and doing some reviews on my YouTube channel. One thing about the Ulanzi version is it's a Sony E-mount and you have to use manual lenses. So my old Nikon lenses are all manual, but I have to buy an adapter. I was looking on Amazon and there are some out there. The B-script version, at least as memory serves, is EF mount, which is a lot more flexible, at least for me. I have a ton of old Canon glass too, or manual Canon glass, I should say. So again, what do you think about using depth of field adapters on smartphones? Is it a good idea? Does it go against your idea of what mobile filmmaking is? Again, mobile being the key word. As these phones advance though, more and more people are going to start using these as their primary camera. You know things are changing when Matty Hapoya, if you follow him, he and Peter McKinnon work together a lot, if you don't know who I'm talking about. While he has supported, in quotes, Moment and some other mobile filmmaking endeavors in the past, he's also been pretty critical. But recently he's been shooting a ton of content on his iPhone 11 Pro, and I think he might be a convert. He's using it for vlogging and that kind of thing, which is something I don't personally do. I do think those are pretty good uses for those devices though. Especially again now with the iPhone 11 Pro and the ultra wide lens, and not to mention the new selfie camera is really good. It's not quite the same quality as the front facing, especially the wide, and I'm talking about for video, but now you can trust and shoot a selfie shot of yourself with the new camera and not have to worry about quality. It's 4K, it'll shoot high frame rate, and of course you can do slow-fies, so hey, slow motion selfies, I mean, how can you beat that? So I don't know, we'll see what I end up doing. I'm torn. It's definitely an interesting device. I'm talking about the depth of field adapter, especially at that price point. But if I buy one, I'm not really sure how often I would use it. So we'll see what I decide to do. Stay tuned. If you've been following this podcast and you follow me on social media, you know I've been working hard on a new course. And that course is now finally live. It's called Smartphone Cinematography 101. It's all about smartphone video and smartphone cinematography, as the title would indicate. The cool thing I think about the course though is the cinematography side, where I teach the fundamentals of cinematography, the basic principles. That applies to any and all cameras. And once you learn that stuff, that'll stay with you forever. I always preach that technology changes all the time, and it does. And so while I absolutely go over the tech aspects in the course, when you learn the cinematography side of things, how to shoot good video, how to tell a story, visual storytelling, those skills become timeless. They'll stick with you forever. You'll have to continually learn technology. I've been doing this for 20 years and technology has changed a lot in that time frame. But even when I was shooting 16mm, I still use the same techniques and craft that I learned all those years ago. Today, shooting with smartphones, shooting with a red camera, my Blackmagic camera, doesn't matter. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I put a link in the description. And then don't forget, I also have my Filmic Pro course. And if you get the smartphone course, you can get 30% off the Filmic Pro course, or vice versa. So you can bundle those two courses together for a pretty good deal. The best thing about mobile filmmaking and smartphone video to me is that it allows people to get off their butt and go out there and make something. There's really no barriers. So as I like to say, don't wait to create. Go make your movie, go make your YouTube video, shoot that real estate project, whatever you want to do. Again, just don't wait to create, okay? Get out there and make something cool. This is Blake Calhoun. I'm your host of Almost Professional. Thanks for listening, guys, and I will talk to you in the next episode.